Hey everyone, it's me, Dr. Daniel, and in this video, I want to talk about the rules of scientific investigation methodology and how mRNA vaccine manufacturers have apparently decided to break the rules. Now look, there's a lot of people who get upset because of the information that I've decided to share on the COVID vaccines and the very real risks associated with them. Some of these people, are medical doctors, scientists, and then, of course, there's just people who have taken a personal interest in this stuff. And all I have to say to you all is that your ignorance is showing. Just because you have a medical degree, or even though you read a research paper, that doesn't mean that you understand it or that you know how to understand the data from it. Again, your idiocracy is showing. So stop it. Fact is, most people don't want accurate information. Most people want information that ultimately validates their feelings. People who have been getting vaccinated their whole lives or who have simply accepted the concepts or narrative of vaccines are going to find it extremely hard to see through the information that is available. I get it. I understand. Growth requires you to be open to unlearning ideas that have been strongly ingrained into your DNA. And for most of us, we've been told, right, taught that vaccines are just things that you do, and this is the saving grace. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Now, all that said, I hope that you can watch this information and you can watch it with kindness, and you're able to open your heart to understanding what I'm really trying to say here. Look, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm pro-freedom, and especially pro-freedom of medical choice and intervention. I would argue for somebody's right to get vaccinated as much as I will argue for somebody's right to not get vaccinated. It's plain and simple, and there really should be there shouldn't be any question regarding that. Regardless of your personal beliefs, you have no right to force something into my body. And regardless of your personal beliefs, you have no right to keep other people from choosing to inject things into their bodies. That is not something that's arguable. It's a basic right of human freedom. We are free people, right? I hope so. My intention here is to bring to surface the data, information that is all too often skipped over or suppressed even, or misunderstood, even by medical doctors, which can help to make help people to make better choices and help people to make better decisions for themselves. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, science is very much a beautiful thing because through science, we can observe our world objectively, or at least we have the potential to do so, and of getting to a particular truth. The best chance that we have at getting to that truth is going to be based on a foundation of data. And that data can be good data, it can be unbiased, unadulterated data, or it can be biased, misconstrued, and intentionally confusing. Now, right now, there is a mountain of biased and unusable data, or really data that should not be used, that is in no way, shape, or form allowing us to come to a truth, especially regarding COVID vaccinations. Just because, again, you read a research paper, just because you read science, the actual paper even, or just because you read a headline reported on the news, doesn't mean that there's an understanding of that science or even that it's true. This is a big problem that we have right now with our media. And as it turns out, even medical journals, unfortunately. Now, this whole process of peer review is being attacked. And I hate to say, even bought. And it makes me sad because as a doctor myself and as a previous researcher myself, how am I supposed to trust medical journals that I've relied on for years? And it's one thing for a newspaper or an author at a news site, a reporter, to report findings that are completely opposite of what a research paper actually says or finds. But when the journals themselves are now reporting inaccurate information, well, shit, things are getting pretty bad. And the most important factor in science is, again, the data that we're using to understand our reality. And the quality of that data is what matters. Now, there's an expression, lies, damn lies, and statistics. In case you didn't already know, statistics allows for people to take data and manipulate it in a way that expresses a certain truth that is not very truthful. And I made a video previously where I talked about, the relative risk versus absolute risks. And there are many, many examples in the pharmaceutical world where drugs are made out to be a saving grace when there's actually very little impact that they have on further analysis or understanding of the data points. And this is marketing science at its best. And unfortunately, very much so, this is what happens in the field of science. But again, if you do understand scientific methodology and you understand the different types of research studies that are out there and the importance of unbiased, truly honest data points, then you should be able to look at beyond the headlines. You should be able to look beyond the fluff and come to conclusions yourself. That's the whole point of research papers and the ability to look at their data, how they set up the designs, and then whether or not the results are true or reflective. Now, if we don't collect data in the right ways, then everything that comes after that is not going to be accurate or impossible to draw the right conclusions from. I made another video where I talked about how we're losing a true placebo. We no longer have data that allows for the original trials of these vaccines to be randomized and controlled. We don't have placebos. So there's very real problems right now with the trials and the way that they were originally done, and then what we've done afterwards. Now, this can all have a major impact on not only public health policies, but adverse health effects within the population, and that is my concern. Now, whether you look at the Moderna clinical study protocols or, I've got right here, here's the Pfizer clinical protocol where they describe how they set up their study and what they did. Whether or not, again, you look at the Pfizer or the Moderna clinical study protocol, you're going to find that their data collection is actually incomplete. At least with respect to anyone making a claim that the current vaccines reduce the rate of infection and can contribute to herd immunity and help the population as a whole in that sense. Again, if you understand research methodology and data collection, you cannot argue this point, okay? You can't do it. There's also issues with the fact that we, again, no longer have a control group because almost everyone who participated in these trials who served as the control and were given placebo or saline solution, have been given the opportunity to get the actual vaccine afterwards. And again, I completely agree with that. They have every right to. If they really decided to participate in these trials, hoping to get the vaccine, and then later they found out that they got a placebo, and once the vaccines were distributed, they have every right to do that. Unfortunately, I think if of all these individuals really knew that the data collection wasn't appropriate or accurate, they may have decided to not. Again, it's crappy data. But this study was doomed before it began because, again, the setup allowed for tracking symptomatic infection, not an actual infection. In these trials, people were tested to see whether or not they were PCR tested to see if they had COVID at the beginning, before the first vaccines were delivered. Then they were tested again at the second dose, and that was it. So they got tested before the vaccine, they got tested before their second dosage, and then that was it. They didn't get tested at the very end of it. And again, this is a problem because we don't know if it actually truly resulted in reduced infection rates. It was all just based on symptoms. So very, very important, again, to understand that. So they tested before, during, but not after for actual infection. They simply observed for symptoms of illness and reported a reduction in severity of SARS-CoV-2 infection and hospitalization, which is great. Okay, that's really good to hear. And when we talk about effectiveness and efficacy of 95%, 94%, this is in reducing symptoms of illness. It's not reducing infection. But again, that's great, right? That is good data, and it's great to know that. No problems there. But we cannot, in no way, scientifically speaking, make a claim that the vaccines reduce infections or contribute to herd immunity even, because we simply don't have the data to be able to demonstrate that. Any claim otherwise is a lie and they're misinterpreting the data. Now, what we can say is that there's a reduction in severe illness. And I think that it's great for those people who are in a demographic that would not do well with a natural infection. But again, there is no valid evidence that herd immunity can be reached with vaccines or that vaccines actually prevent infection. You cannot say that unless you're a scientific rule breaker, which obviously, there's a lot of them out there. And even right now, we are starting to hear about how the vaccines are 100% effective in children. The fact is, you could give water to children and make a claim that water is 100% effective at treating COVID-19 because their case fatality rate is already so low. So whatever intervention you actually compare severity to, it's going to look really good on paper. Here's if we first of all, if we look at the cumulative COVID deaths, the case rates, right? You look at the cumulative confirmed rates and you look at the actual what do you call it? The number of deaths, right, that are associated with this. Just look at this. You can see that basically here at the very bottom is the cumulative confirmed death rates compared to the actual number of cases. I mean, obviously that's a really big difference, right? But here is an article that talks about age-specific COVID-19 case fatality rates. And I'm just going to scroll all the way to the bottom here to talk about this. But this paper was looking at case fatality rates of different age groups. And for 0 to 19, it's 0%. The CFR, the case fatality rate, is 0%. So anything you do to these people can show 100% effectiveness. We start to see increases in fatality over the age of 60, and then a dramatic increase, from 9.5% up to 24.1 for a dramatic increase over 70. So again, I'm okay with people that have a higher case fatality rate if they're really concerned, immunocompromised or whatever. I mean, these people have a right to get vaccinated, especially if it's going to reduce the severity of illness, not the actual infectivity. Again, there are people who obviously get this virus and do not do well with it. And that's unfortunate. If these vaccines have been proven to reduce the severity of illness, give everyone in nursing homes and people over the age of 65, especially over 70, these vaccines to reduce their risk of death, especially if that's their choice. But to not, to give it to otherwise healthy people who have a higher chance of dying from a car crash, I don't think so. Here's another paper, and this is a paper that was, just published. This is April 13th, 2021. Case fatality rates for COVID-19 are higher than case fatality rates for motor vehicle collisions over the age of 40. So, that's why I just said, okay, when we talk about risks of actual car accidents or car injuries, this is a pretty interesting study where it compared fatality rates for individuals with COVID-19 and other conditions. Basically what you can see here is up at the top, this is this is the number of people that are dying from these specific conditions: lung and bronchial cancer, leukemia, breast cancer, prostate cancer. Here's flu over the age of 65. In red, here's COVID. As you see, you can see the case fatality rate starts to go up, of course, as your age goes up. So here we're looking at over the age of 60, where some of these things are much higher. But below that, here's motor vehicle accidents. You can say it's well below. So that's what I mean by that. But anyway, this paper compared case fatality rates for individuals with COVID-19 and other conditions. And according to this paper, for people less than the age of 65, cancer, heart disease, drug overdoses, car accidents, and guns, fatalities from gunshot wounds are all much more likely to kill you. It makes no sense to say that vaccines are contributing to herd immunity because herd immunity was already present way before the introduction of these vaccines. And that's a problem because there's a paper right now out of Israel that's talking about this. And a lot of people, not the paper itself, but a lot of people are taking this paper and they're using it as a way to make that claim. Again, perfect example of how we make scientific claims that are just not valid. So we need to be careful with this. Now, again, to me, it makes no sense to say that vaccines are contributing to herd immunity because herd immunity was already present. We fully know that. In addition, because of the lack of testing for infectivity following vaccination, we cannot make a scientific claim that vaccines are actually preventing infections. Based on the data sets, we should see that infection rates stay the same. So the same number of people are getting infected. Of course, this is assuming that we're testing at the same rate, right, as we did last year, and we're not. I mean, we've all heard that even the CDC made changes to the way that PCR testing is being done. We're not running PCR cycles the way that we did before. So we're not testing, the same, and we're not testing as much. But again, the data does suggest that infection rates should stay the same, but the severity of illness, the actual number of deaths and hospitalizations should go down. I can get behind that, especially for susceptible people. But look, I have no personal invested interest in vaccines. I don't have any personal gains in sharing this information. I don't have any personal gains in people who get vaccinated. But to the people who do, those who are in a position to generate billions in profits, who already have, without any recourse, those who are in positions of authority to make personal gains because of public policy that impacts some of these other organizations that are, making billions, we cannot let them, after the fact, when they had a chance to perform studies appropriately, to determine whether these vaccines prevent infection, or maybe they collected the data, right? Maybe they actually collected the data, but they didn't publish it, which, by the way, they have permission to do that. And that's unfortunate, but that's totally legal. Now, I don't know whether they have that information or not, but the fact is that they're not testing for the actual infection, whether it was 2 weeks after their second vaccination, 2 months, or at the end of the clinical trials. We did not test these people to see if it determined actual differences in infectivity, to determine if these vaccines actually do that. We cannot let these organizations or let anybody in a public health position, to any scientific journal or news outlet or government official, make the claim that they provide herd immunity and reduce infection. You just cannot do that. It's unscientific to do so. And if you're watching this and you disagree, well, unfortunately, your idiocracy is showing. Why this is currently happening, I don't know. I'm not supporting conspiracies. I'm not saying these people, these organizations who designed the trials, or who are doing follow-up studies using the original trial data, are idiots. But good Lord, where have all the scientists gone? Where is science going? I really hope that you understand what I'm trying to say here. I hope that your hearts can open up to the truth. And I hope more than anything else that you're able to stay kind with the people that you disagree with. Now go and do good things.